welcome to today's webinar. It's great to have you here, and I'm really looking forward to an exciting 45 minutes or so as we look at what it takes to become an awesome virtual presenter. We've got a specialist here with us today that I'll introduce in just a moment, but before we do that, I just want to do a couple of pieces of housekeeping. So the first thing is we're going to cover quite a lot of content today, and you may be wanting to write furiously, etc. What I suggest is that you just absorb it, take it on board, and afterwards, Jackie from our marketing team is very helpfully putting together a cheat sheet for you, and Jackie will send that out to everybody that's been on the webinar. The other thing that's going to happen is it's going to be a recorded webinar. So at any time, if you want to go back and remind yourself of any of it, you're very welcome to go to our website and to get some information. So I'm delighted to welcome all the way from Canada, although now based in London, Janet Tarras. Janet is an expert public speaker. Welcome, Janet. I'll say some words about.
Thank you so much. I'm very excited to be here. Very excited, especially with you, Francis.
Well, it's my pleasure. Well, of course, we're not alone, are we, Janet? Who's this other person that's here?
This other person?
His name. Your dog.
Oh, Buster. Yes,
Buster.
yes, he is a fur person. Yes, Buster is the best dog in the world. With a big warning to all who are attending, Buster's usually very, very quiet unless somebody comes to the door, in which case I send my hugest apologies, and so does he, but it won't be long.
Well, we couldn't find anywhere else for Buster, so there he is. But as I say, Janet, very, very experienced presenter and public speaker. She helps our clients tirelessly improve their presence skills and dealing with impact, delivering with impact. And she's even won prizes and has been become one of the top 3 presenters here in the UK and Ireland. So we're in safe hands. And Janet, you're in good company as well, because we have people here from Canada on the call. So
hey!
From Peru, Mexico, across Europe. So we've got a nice, really nice audience for you today. Now, a year ago, I might have been talking to you saying, yeah, it's really important that people learn to become a virtual presenter. And you may or may not have paid attention, but we all know what's happened since then. And what has really happened is that we're now told that around a quarter of the workforce long term is going to be working in exactly this way. It's become our next normal, the way that we operate. And so presenting virtually becomes more and more critical. And I'm not just talking to training professionals here. I'm talking to salesmen. I'm talking to board directors. I'm talking to anybody who's got an important message to get out and needs to get it out through this medium that we're working on and with today. So when I look at people presenting now and think, well, do they need virtual presentation skills? I get a different kind of resistance. I get the resistance that says, well, I've been doing it for 10 months now, and do you know what? I think I'm pretty good at it. That's true for some people. There are some amazing people doing great presentations. But there's also a lot of people who've just got comfortable with the technology. They've got a bit more comfortable maybe talking to a camera, but they've forgotten that they're still trying to deliver an important message. And some of those people have become, for the rest of us, what I would call an oh no person. And an oh no person is the person that when you see an agenda and you see Francis or whatever, you think, oh no. No, I know what Francis, no. Boring presentation in the world and all of those kind of things. And that's what we're here to fix today. We want you to be mindful of what it is. We want to be mindful of your online presence and how that's operating. And I do want to very quickly say, this is not about your online brand. We did that in our last webinar, Walking the COVID Tightrope. So if you want to look at your online brand, that's the place to go. Go and have a look at that webinar. This is about the nuts and bolts and work that needs to be done for us to become great presenters online. And I've already broken the first golden rule, and that's got my slides out of order. So, but it is a huge welcome to Janet. And this is loosely what we're going to cover today as we go through. How to grab attention, how to prepare for success, knowing your audience, and dealing with difficult people. Now, as we go through this, if you get questions, please put them in the chat. And although we're going to work here for about 45 minutes, hopefully we can answer your questions at the end. And if we can't, I've already mentioned Jackie, she will help us pull those together, and we'll come out to you with a written response to anything that you've got issues with. So without further ado, I'm going to launch straight into the first piece for you, Janet, which is, how do you grab attention and keep your audience engaged?
Well, thank you. And just to say welcome to everybody, particularly those from Canada. Although I love all of you, I have a special place in my heart for Canadians, even though I've been in the UK for 20 something years. But to get back to your question, I would say that there are so many elements. There's not just one. So if you were hoping for a one-worded answer, it would have been a very short webinar. But there are some very core elements that everybody needs to get right. And I would say it has to be done within the first 2 minutes of speaking. So aside from, I suppose, the board members who are on this call, for the rest of us, some of the first things that need to be mentioned is why it is that they are giving up their very, very valuable time to listen to you in particular. So if it's you, Francis, what is it about you that's going to give you credibility? What is it about you that's going to give them the authority in order to speak? And before going on to the next point, to be very specific, when I'm talking about you, it doesn't have to be a long list of credentials that you should have gotten your PhD in, because some people get very nervous. Oh my God, what if I don't know enough? In fact, it could be a real passion that you might have, or even a story that happened to you, something that happened which has made you very interested in this subject. Whatever the case is, you need to mention it right away, because these people, like all of us, are super busy and they need to know they could trust you. So the first thing to start with is you and why. So we will call it why you. But the next one is actually more about the audience. Why are they there? And what is it that they're going to get out of it? So again, that has to be in the first few seconds, or I would say within the first minute of the presentation. They have to know if they're in the right place, that they're going to be given the information that they 100% need, and what they're going to get out of it. And then I'll call that why you. And then the final is why now? Why can't they do this course in a year, or for that matter, even tomorrow? They're going to turn off their computer and do something else, maybe their emails, etc. But you have to explain to them why it is that they're sitting there right now. So to sum up what I've just said, you want to tell within the first minute or two why you. Then you have to,
Why me?
and why you, why exactly, why
Why
Francis,
me? Why am I presenting to you today?
exactly,
Yeah,
actually go on. So you sum up what
yeah.
I said
So
better
why
that way.
me? Why is it important that you listen to me? Um, why you? Why is it important that you're paying attention to this and how it's going to help you? And then why
Exactly.
now? What is the circumstances, the context? I
Yeah.
guess that's kind of what we're trying to say.
Yeah, very good. You 100%.
I've,
Well done, Francis. You
I've
passed.
heard it. I've heard it from you a lot of times. So that's and you've drilled it in, because that's so important. And actually, it's quite a tough thing to do at the beginning of a chat. And I've seen us, we drill people, but the emphasis here is it's not necessarily whether they're doing a training. It's about any meeting. It's why is this important? Time is valuable. It's a limited, non-renewable resource. By spending this time, you're going to get this from it. And by the way, I know what I'm talking about, and this is why. Yeah,
Exactly.
without it becoming Too
And
cheesy.
actually, can I just add one point there, Francis, is you would say this in any single presentation, whether it's live or virtual, but I have to tell you how much more important this is on a virtual platform because of the fact that you could easily lose people within the first 5 minutes. So
Yeah,
while you're talking, if you don't give them a really good reason to be listening to you, off they go into their other cyber worlds that they were already kind of tempted by before they even started looking and listening to you.
for sure. The world is full of distractions now, as,
That's for
as we're
sure.
finding out.
Yes.
So, of course, to get the second two, the why you and why now, I guess you really need to know the audience and get the
Correct.
message
Yes. Oh, it's almost like you've planned these slides beforehand. How amazing.
a little.
Yes, so exactly. So the why you, so you really need to understand who you're speaking to. So for example, today I had asked Jackie, our lovely marketing executive, for a list of attendees. Who are we speaking to? What is it that they need to know? And how should I tailor my message to make sure that it's relevant to them?
Yeah.
So the first thing I want to do is say, who's going to be there? What is it they already know? What don't I want to say? Because what if they're going to think, oh, this is so fundamental, I've heard this 1,000 times before, I really, oh, gotta go, and then they go off. So again, we had discussed levels of people who are going to be here, whether it's the salespeople or the executives, the juniors, whoever it is. I've tailored my responses to make sure that they're going to be relevant for the people that I'm speaking to. And I learned that lesson very, very early on in my career. And that was when I was just starting out. I was giving a talk. I was in the cosmetics industry before this. I was asked to do a talk on the details of the cosmetic product industry, and I did this presentation, and it was very well received. And one of the biggest cosmetic companies in the world, a representative came over to me and said, Janet, will you deliver that exact presentation back at our office? And I said, sure, yeah. I mean, I didn't even think of it. I was so new at that time. And I went and I spoke to, I think there was about 50 people in the audience in this very large cosmetic company, of which they were very senior level members. And I said exactly what I had said back in this presentation. And I could see it happening. I could see the audience starting to glaze over and just sort of look at their phones and write in their notebooks. And ultimately, I lost them because they knew most of the things that I was already saying. I had not tailored the message. And you only need that to happen once for it to be ingrained in you for the rest of your lives. So
I'm
always,
feeling.
always tailor it. Yeah, are you feeling that pain that I was
Oh,
feeling? Oh yeah,
yeah.
it's hard. It's hard. Another really, really important bit, and I could talk on this for hours in a virtual environment, and this is a huge difference than when we were sitting in a meeting together where everyone's staring at each other. You need to have more engagement with your audience. I can't say that enough times because, again, in a meeting room, you have to look respectful. Everyone's going to notice when you're looking at your phone. That isn't the case online. Online, you could easily start doing your emails. I mean, I could be doing it right now for all you know if I was that good of a multitasker, which I'm not, but if
No.
I was. So one of the best ways we do make sure that we're actually tailoring and making sure that our audience is involved is by constantly reaching out to them, and not annoyingly. You don't want to do that every 2 minutes. Like, are you listening? Are you listening? But no, in a different way. You want to get them in the chat box. You want to say, okay, everybody, and you could do that now, actually, whoever's on here, can you write where you are writing from in the chat box? Just a one word. Please write where you're writing from. Go ahead and do that. So that's the one way you could do it. You could always have a poll. How many people are very afraid of public speaking, and you get that in. You could always do some sort of a competition. It really does depend on the size of the audience, of course. You don't want to come up with some hard and fast rules. Everything you do with regard to engagement has to be tailored to the size of the audience that you're speaking to. Sometimes you can get them talking. Okay, tell me where you're from, and get their microphone on. And other times you can't. So there's going to be a lot of lessons that we need to actually start engaging our audience with and tailoring that to the amount of people that you're speaking with.
And I
Does
think
that
the
make
key
sense?
there is tailoring. I mean, I was talking to um, the global head of talent for a particular organization, and I said, what's the biggest turn off for you in a virtual meeting. And she said, oh, that's when everybody's just, it's the same questions that we get at the beginning every time in terms of what's the weather like and all that kind of stuff. And it's important that you bear in mind, who is this audience? How tech savvy are they to a degree?
Mhm. Mhm.
And what's the context, I guess, for the message I'm trying to get across today?
Yes.
And that's where maybe you could use a poll. Actually,
Mhm.
we've been doing it with we put a QR code on the screen, and they just we ask them a few questions, and it helps to set the tone
Mhm.
for the
Absolutely.
meeting. But I'm guessing we don't really want to overcomplicate it, do we, Janet? Or do we?
No.
I don't know.
No, we don't want to overcomplicate it, and I agree. And I know that many people might be sitting there saying, "Yeah, this is very easy for you to say when you're talking about public speaking. It's a very easy topic to engage with. But what about when I'm giving my financial numbers for the years, or what about projecting our sales forecast, or and then it becomes a lot more serious, and I'm not going to start asking my audience their feelings and what they think.
Yeah.
And this is the challenge I often get to me, and come back to me, and I always look at them and I say, well, then in that case, how do you feel about talking to a screen and knowing that you're ultimately speaking to yourself? That's a question back to them. Because the truth is, if you don't find a way to engage with them, even if it's in a less fun way, rather than a poll, but rather, if you have, what was your forecast last year? Everyone, please put it in the chat. Or have you considered this method of figuring X, Y, and Z out? Yes or no? If you don't do that, you might as well be speaking to yourself in the mirror because nobody's listening. And that's what you're trying to avoid. It might be more technical than what we're talking about here. You
Yeah.
might not have meerkats on your screen, but if you don't engage and engage more often than you ever would in a face-to-face meeting, you will lose them.
And I remember. I mean, we created our first true virtual classrooms back in 2014,
Mm,
and I realised really quickly that some of the people that were going to deliver them needed some help in terms of their preparation and preparing for success in that case. So for them, what I did, which was super cruel actually, but it paid off, was I, I got an email coincidentally at the same time from Woucher. And for our international colleagues, it's kind of like a discount site where you can buy things cheap. And it just hit me. It was become a television presenter for £20. It's like, so my team were absolutely delighted to be signed up for this course.
mm.
And we went along and we got presented with massive TV cameras and all the rest of it. And we met people who are larger than life. And what we learned there is it's okay to engage people with graphics or with polls and chats and all these other things. But the real vessel for engaging people is yourself.
Yes.
And if you're not
Yes.
enthusiastic about it, why would anybody else be? So what preparation do you need to be doing yourself to
Mm.
really have that positive impact up front? And then we'll go into the more technical, planning parts of it. But before that, Janet, I'd really like to hear about some of the things we can do to prepare ourselves for that kind of challenge.
So the non-technical preparation is, I think what you want to do is firstly deal with any nerves that you might have. And that is going to be something that will come through. Some people, nerves is a strange thing. People react very differently to nerves. Some people get very upset, very angry, very on edge, irritable, I think is the best way. Other people become more monotone and very, very calm, and become almost a little too monotonous, where you could see that through. And other people are going to be playing with their hair or constant. So managing your nerves is one of the biggest things you could do. And one of the things that I always say to people whenever they are petrified to get up there or speak or even get onto the computer is, it's not about you. And I think that was on the previous slide. If you could remember that nobody really cares how many errors or times you say for that matter, or perhaps if you can't remember exactly the word you're going to say, so long as you are there for the audience, so long that you as you are remembering that actually it's your content and your delivery that's going to matter most, then it takes the pressure off of all of those other details that you might be nervous about. So that's the first thing I would do. um
So, so
yes,
you're
sorry.
saying, in a way, I like that, because what you're saying is it's not about you, it's
No,
about serving people and giving them what they need to either learn something or make the right decision or to understand the situation or whatever it is. So,
exactly.
so you're actually disassociating yourself from it and saying, right, this is the best way to help these people is for me to put on the best performance of my life, if you like.
Exactly. You almost imagine it as you are the vessel for the information. You're the
Yeah,
vessel for the information to land as well as it possibly can, rather than I have to do the best I can or else I'm going to get in a lot of trouble. That sort
yeah,
of thing. So I think that those are the most important elements that you want to think about from a mindset point of view. Obviously, breathing is a very important part, but we won't do that
yeah,
here, teaching you how to breathe. And voice. If you can do any kind of voice exercises. And this is a huge issue, by the way, because everyone that I train virtually generally does have very, very serious technical like jobs. And so a lot of what they're talking about becomes a little bit boring. So one of the things I get them to do, and this is a top tip if you'd like, I generally, if anyone has any children, what I do is I go and get one of my daughter's very old children's book. And the first thing I'll get them to do is read a paragraph of their presentation, which they've prepared. And it's, my name is blah, 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 blah. And then they read this children's book, let's say the Gruffalo and or whatever children's book you have, and they do that and they pretend they're reading it to their child, and all of those voice variations come in. So you go up and down, fast and
interesting.
slow, more exaggerating, and then I get them to read the exact same paragraph again. And almost like magic, they are far more engaging. And I don't mean to actually speaking to them like they're children. That's the last thing you want to do. But it just shows you how your voice can go into all different directions in order to trick people's brains to pay attention.
Yeah,
So very much like what I've just done, your brain saying, hold on, something's changed. Her pace has changed. Let me pay attention. So you're doing that all the time. So those are the types of preparations that I would say are the most important. Of course, looking at time, I could keep going, but those are the big non-technical preps that I would suggest.
yeah, absolutely.
Does
Good.
that make
Okay.
sense to you?
Yeah, no, I think that's good. I mean, the big message I took from the other thing that we did was you got to be yourself plus 25%,
Yes,
because the camera sucks that energy away
that's
and
true.
out of
Yeah.
you. And I think that's true. But what they didn't say that I think is all equally important is you've got to be authentic.
Mm,
So
mm,
you can't just be Tigger, if you like,
agreed.
bouncing around and doing all that.
Yeah.
That's distracting and not helpful either. It's got to be an
Yes, agreed.
authentic passion or an authentic strength in terms of how you're doing it. And I loved what you said about varying the tone and varying the pace. And
Yes.
I stopped myself because as you leant in, I nearly leant in to listen to the end of what you were saying. And because that's how it works. So
Yes.
that's good. And I'm not going to go through all the cliches about failing to prepare, but I do want us to talk about the top tips around the actual preparation of
Mm.
your presentation so that we know we've covered the bases. Can you take us through some guidelines on that, Janet?
Yes, sure. So what you're looking at here, everybody, is a slide which has four categories, if you like. So you have your presenter category, your subject category, your context category, and your audience. If you don't spend time, just to step back for a second, one of the things that people say when there is a keynote speaker is for every hour that that keynote speaker is speaking, he or she has spent 9 hours preparing. So take that in for a second. For every hour that they are speaking, there is 9 hours of preparation. And what they're doing is very much looking at these four categories. Within these four categories, they're looking at them as the presenter, what the audience needs to know about them, where their credentials are, how they're going to come off, even from a branding point of view, which you mentioned before. They're looking at the subject matter, how that subject matter is going to relate to the audience, what the audience knows, what they don't know. They're looking at the context. Where am I presenting? Am I presenting virtually? Are my audience in offices, or is it a hybrid situation? And of course, they're looking at their audience, which we've already discussed. But what tends to happen, and where all the preparation comes to, is almost connecting each category together. So you have to connect the presenter to the subject. How is the presenter authoritative in that subject? You have to connect the subject to the audience. How is the audience going to take that subject matter? What do they already know? What don't they know? You have to connect the context to the subject. How does it relate to that audience? How are they going to take it? Are there going to be hostile people in there? Perhaps there's going to be somebody who's going to get very upset. How have I prepared for that? Et cetera, et cetera. So I could keep going on, but there's ultimately 6 levels of connecting these 4 categories. And each one has to be considered in order to make sure, back to the nervousness issue, that you are so prepared that you don't need to feel nervous anymore. There is no need. You've thought it all through. Of course, you can't control everything, but you've thought through everything you could possibly think through.
Right. And yet, I guess you got to still remain flexible because you always get blindsided, I guess, or you run that risk.
Listen, there is no way that you could prepare for the unexpected, but you could prepare for the possibilities. And of course, you have to remain flexible. If somebody wants to have more of a conversation, but you want to get through all your slides, you need to weigh your options. Say, well, is it more important to actually get everybody into a conversation? How will they learn better? Will they learn better through this conversation, or do I tell them they have to stop speaking now and keep going through my slides? My opinion is generally people learn better through engagement and conversation. It's almost like I'm doing my master's degree in organizational psychology right now, and I could listen to my lecturer, who by the way is a horrible speaker, but I could listen to my lecturer talk about whatever theories, but until he gets us to take away some questions and answer them, that's the time I actually internalize the information. At that point, I'm taking it in, I'm trying to make it make sense to me, and then I'm going to answer his questions and make it relevant. So it's actually really about how to personalize all the information that you're giving to this audience in a way that they can actually take meaning from it and then be able to internalize it. So you make your decision as you go through to decide how flexible you want to be. So that was one example with regard to balancing conversation and slides. But yes, you do have to stay flexible.
Yeah, and going back to your story right at the beginning, Janet, when you told that story about the cosmetics thing,
Mm, mm.
here there was, you can, with hindsight, you can see exactly where you went, maybe dare I say wrong, pardon me, but
Oh, it was
um,
wrong. I mean,
where
we're
it could have been
talking
better.
almost 10 years ago. Yeah.
Yeah,
It was wrong, and you do learn from your mistakes, and of course that was 10 years ago. It's never happened again, and because I would say it happened, I've gotten better and better and better. So of course there's always going to be an error, and I hope that you don't crawl under a rock when you make that error. You have to learn from it. It's a growth mindset, and you have to keep going.
yeah, absolutely, absolutely.
Mm.
One thing we haven't mentioned up to this point, we've done the why me, why you, why now, and we've done preparing ourselves and then preparing, if you like, the structure or covering the bases in terms of the kind of preparation we have to do. But there's something that we haven't brought out, which is around the objective and setting the objective in terms of what the audience is expected to get from this, not necessarily what you want to get from this. Have you got some thoughts
Absolutely.
around that?
So do you mean the general overall objective of the presentation, just to be clear that I
Yeah.
understand your
Yeah. For
question?
me, the objective is what do you want somebody to do as a result of
Yeah.
listening to you? What
Right,
is
right.
important?
So then to answer that question, yes, there's generally 3, if not 6, takeaways that you could aim for. So the first is just to inform somebody. You want to just give them the straight information so that they're informed. The second would be that you want them to actually take in and think about this and maybe even feel something. So you've told a story, like I did in the beginning about when I spoke to those people. I wanted them to feel a little bit of that horror that I had to go through, because I don't want other people to do that. So that could be your objective. Or you might want them to actually act. So the action is, what do you want them to do now? So
Yeah.
whatever it is that your objective is, and this is a huge point, so thank you for bringing it up, right before you write your presentation, and we're going to go through how to write your presentation in just a second, but before you do, make sure that you know exactly what you want to get across to your audience and what you want them to do as a result. And then write it in one line if you can. If you can't write it in one line, it's not a good enough objective. You want to write it in one line. And again, this even goes back to the CEOs who are on this call, or the board presenters. You are still presenting to human beings. So what is it that you want those human beings to do as a result? And
Yeah.
then write it on that paper, stick it on your computer, front and center, and then start building your slides. And
Yeah.
make sure that whatever it is that you're putting into those slides, whatever it is that you're putting into your script, goes back to that objective. And if there's too much information, then you decide what to keep and what to actually throw out based on your objective.
Yeah.
So apologies, there's my dog. So just move my camera. So yeah, that's the main thing that you want to do. You want to make sure that everything is so tight, because you have that objective front and center, and that nothing is going to veer your attention away.
Yeah, absolutely. And just, a plea from me to the salespeople that are on here. Remember, when you're presenting, you must have a goal of, what do I want the person, the customer, potential customer, client, or call it what you want. What do I want them to do as a result of this conversation? Um, and that's so important to get
Yeah,
that right. And
I
and and
certainly, I would
having
agree.
and
Sorry, I
having
didn't
got,
interrupt you.
pardon, Janet. Sorry, I was carrying.
I know, it's actually, this is a really good point, Francis. Something else about virtual is that there's always a delay. And that is when you're having a conversation, again, you have to be very clear that you need to actually take a breath between somebody answering and somebody asking. Otherwise, or you say, and what I often do is, I apologize in advance if I speak on top of you. It's because there's a minor delay. So that's just a virtual presenting technique that I just wanted to throw in there. But that was it. What were you saying, Francis?
Right, thank you, Janet. That's really good. But you're spot on, actually. So yeah, so having set a clear objective, it's really important that you then tell a story. If you tell stories, stories sell, and I'm not just talking about selling your product or service. I'm talking about selling your ideas, selling your
Mm-hmm.
concepts, selling your team, selling your own potential, if you like, whatever it is. Stories sell, and we've all heard of storyboarding, but I just want you, please, Janet, to explain this in a
Okay.
way that's going to land with people, and then I'm going to very quickly build a pseudo storyboard to show people what we really mean as well. So do you mind just taking us through
Yeah.
these
I
stages?
will, and I'll even help you create your storyboard. So
Uh,
this is the
that's good.
practical part of this session. All right, stories are vital. We all know that. We know that our human brain reacts best to stories. We know that that is part of our history, our very being. So using stories, again, even as the most high tech financial director out there, you still need to add some stories into your presentation. And by making it flow through, you will keep your audience very, very engaged. So what we do is we use storyboarding. And this slide looks a wee bit complicated. I apologize, but it's actually quite simple. Let me go through it step by step. The first thing that I'd like you to look at is you'll see something that says headline. And that headline is a full sentence. Generally, it's a full sentence. And you have to put, or you are recommended to put that full sentence at the very top of your slide. By putting it at the very top of your slide, you are making your point solid. And then anything that goes underneath that headline has to relate to that one sentence. Make sense? So anything that you're putting there has to go back to that sentence. Now, this one in particular, we'll look at the bottom one. It says ABC believes it could improve profits in its Mideast zone by investing in technology. What you're seeing there underneath it, if you can see it, is a graph to illustrate that exact point. Nothing else should be in there. Then, so that is what, sorry, let me just start with, that's what actually we mean by vertical logic. Anything up here has to be supported by there, hence vertical. Okay. But then you have something called horizontal logic. And that is making sure that this sentence here, ABC believes it can improve profits, is going to be followed by a point that actually continues the story. So let's see this one. Several competitors have already automated their most critical operations. That is supporting the sentence before. And then again, vertically, you want to make sure that whatever's under there supports that. And then this sentence has to be then supported by the one before it, but also lead to the one after it. So to keep pace, ABC should invest in technology now. So this is how one would do a vertical and horizontal storyboard. It's as simple as we can make it. I know it looks complicated, but if you think about it, you're first saying ABC needs to improve its profits. You're then saying several competitors in that zone has already invested in some critical operations or automated operations. And then your third point is, so if you want to keep pace, this is what you need to do. That is storyboarding in a nutshell. Do you want to do it together and we could show the audience exactly how to do it?
We should. I've just realized a fatal flaw. And
Okay.
that is that I've got a long way to reach to type. So I'm going to just stand up and bring this with me,
Okay.
if I may. So it's one of those funny desks
Yeah,
that
we got
goes.
a new angle of Francis,
Yeah,
everybody.
sorry about that.
Yes.
So yeah, so
The upper angle.
it's a yeah, I think so. So if the audience can bear with me, I'm going to just create a new flight. And the important thing here, we'll create a blank presentation, and we'll put
Okay.
some other slides in it. Now, so
Yeah.
I don't know. Should I do something about financial services or something? Something,
Well,
that's my
actually, I was going
background.
to suggest because I know you know financial services. So
Okay.
let's seeing as you have that background, let's talk about something like what's something that's very concerning for the financial
Okay.
industry right
Well, I'd like to go with you know, pensions or people investing for the long term, something like that at the moment. So
now.
so
Okay.
if my goal is to try and convince my company, imagine I
Mhm,
work for ABC Investment Services Limited,
mhm.
my goal is to convince my company that we need to invest in developing what's called a diversified fund, okay,
Ooh,
one that spreads risks and
sounds
full of hedging
very
and all that
exciting.
stuff that we
Yeah.
don't need to go through all of that. So I'm going to build a story that's going to go in that direction. So this is what Janet
Okay.
was saying about the thing.
Okay.
Now the
So the
first
first
thing,
thing. Oh, sorry. You're going to
oh,
say it. Go ahead.
well, I was going to say a different first thing. Do you want to do yours first?
I was just going to say, because I see you opening up that presentation, I wanted you to do something that would help the audience be able to see this a little bit better. So you see how everybody, can you see that Francis has it in his normal view where you have normal on the viewpoint? Instead of normal view, Francis, what I want you to do is go into outline view. So if you press on view, you'll see normal view there, outline view. Perfect, perfect, perfect.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. So
Okay.
this is how you tell a story using PowerPoint. This is very exciting. So did you want to say something before I go on?
No, I was going to say that so many people turn up and talk to us and say, I need to do a presentation. I've got these 4 or 5 slides. And you're exactly right, because these points are complementary. What they're trying to do is fit around something rather than getting the story flowing right. And this outline view is so important because you're going to have to forgive my typing, okay? But I've prepared a few words. So let's get this working.
So your objective, so your first slide, yes, exactly. So you go ahead and do what you think is the first point that people need to know about this financial crisis in uncertain times,
Yeah,
your VUCA time. There you go. So that's your first one. So people are faced with uncertainty regarding sorry, I have to move my
Their
slide,
investment.
their investments. Okay,
Yeah.
so that's perfect. So then we don't have to create that slide at this point, because
No.
we'll do that later. You're coming up with your horizontal logic right now. Okay, we're not
Yeah.
doing vertical, everybody. So the next point has to relate to that first point. So clearly you've thought this through. The next one is, okay, the global market has become increasingly unstable.
Unstable. Okay.
Okay. And then your third point that is going to relate to that. People are looking for stability. Perfect. Okay. Oh, and have
I've got a
limited
few of these.
options. Keep going, keep going. Okay. So the point, everybody, as Francis is typing, is you're going to see a flow here. And even if you didn't see anything else on these slides, all you're seeing is this outline. That should be able to sum up your entire presentation. So that is a storyboarding method that we use. You go into outline view and then you measure. Does my first slide uh, follow, or flow is a better word when it comes to presentation styles. Does it flow to my second point? Does my second point flow to my third point, etc., etc.? So now, Francis, tell us, does that work for you? Or you could even read it out. What do you
Yeah.
think?
Well, it's okay, but we really wanted to drive this point home about you should be able to go to outline view if you're the most senior person in an organization and haven't got time to plow through a load of slides. You should be able to read this and get the story,
Exactly.
and then I can't remember whether you call it horizontal or vertical view,
This is the
but
horizontal.
you build the evidence for what you're
Uh,
saying in that slide, and that's it,
that's what we
and
call
that's how
vertical.
you do it. Please resist the temptation to be in normal view and go, oh, I need to create all of these different things, because as you can see here, it's created it for us pretty nicely. And you'll have your own templates and all those things. I've just used a blank one, but it builds it for you, and then it forces you to go down a very planful route, actually, in terms of building a convincer strategy, getting the psychological aspects of it right. And so it's a powerful technique that I think is a bit misunderstood. I think people mistake metaphor for storyboarding a little bit. Would you agree with that, Janet?
Yes, I think I do also. I think also people tend to write their scripts before their slides, and what they don't realize is actually the two work together very, very nicely. So when you're storyboarding in PowerPoint, like you've just shown us, you're also writing your script and you're keeping it super tight. So you can also have a little bit more creative thought as you're going through it. One really big important point that I'd like to note here, everybody, is that as you're doing your vertical build to that headline, you don't want to overload people with information. You don't want to make it too heavy, especially in the virtual world. And I keep going back to, especially in the virtual world. The virtual world is so easy to lose focus and interest. So you want to make sure that whatever these people are looking at is not taking away from the point that you're going to make. So building your slides, knowing what your headline is, creating something visually very, very attractive, but also relevant. And then having what your notes are underneath your slide, as you always do in PowerPoint, and knowing that what you're going to say, big point, please don't read the information from the slide. There's nothing I hate more than somebody looking at a slide and all you're doing is reading the information. You want to sum up the information on that slide. You want to give reason and the right for that information to be on that slide, but you don't want to read it. So
Cool.
that is as clear as we can be, I suppose, with storyboarding.
Janet, we've had a question come in, actually, and I think this would be a good time to ask it.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is, I mainly present to multinational groups. Any tips for presenting to people who are in their second language?
Oh, that's a good one.
Yeah, it is.
Yes. It is. And of course, most people actually that I present to are non-English speakers. The first thing I would suggest is that you are very careful with your pace. Your pace of speaking has to be clear, and you could actually practice that with people around you, even if they are English speaking, making sure that they're able to follow you. Or if you have any friends that are not English speaking, it's a really important time to say, okay, does this pace make sense to you? But in addition, you also want to tell your audience, if at any point I'm speaking too quickly, please use this symbol. You don't want to get people to interrupt you, maybe because you're in a flow, but very often there are symbols that says slow down for the speaker. And that is a very important icon to use. If you don't have that icon, you could create some sort of simple symbol in maybe use one of the reactions that are available. You could allocate the heart to you're going too fast or something like that. So that will really, really help you.
Great, thank you very much. Okay, and no matter how much you prepare or how brilliant your message is, sometimes we do have the odd challenging person, shall I say,
Yeah.
let me just see if I can check, odd challenging person that we come across. And so just to wrap it up very, very quickly here,
How much time do
um,
we have? We have 5 minutes?
well, 2 minutes actually,
2 minutes. Okay.
according
Well
to
then,
me, but yeah.
let me focus on one of the most annoying, I think, that is voted all across Europe at this point, on the virtual conversations, are those who seem to know it all. We call them the know-it-alls, and they're the ones that tend to choose to take the power away from you as you're presenting, because then they say, oh yes, I know this X, Y, and Z. So one of the things you could do with the complainer, oh sorry, the complainer, the know-it-all, is perhaps actually include them in the conversation, acknowledge that they do know a lot, and ask them to actually help you with the Q&A section. And that would be a really great way to use their expertise. But make sure that they know that you are the one presenting and that you have a schedule to follow. So take back that power. That
Yeah,
is my biggest tip when it comes to somebody like a know-it-all.
I know when we're helping people to learn SL2, for example, we've got a lovely phrase that we use, and that is, do not confuse confidence with capability. So you got to be a little bit careful there in terms of that. So
Yeah.
that's great, Janet. Thank you very much indeed for that. We do have another question here that's come in, and it's somebody who's clearly saying, how can you evaluate your performance? Because when you're in a virtual presentation, you're kind of in it, I
Mm,
guess. And so
mm.
they're saying, how can you evaluate your performance after you've given a virtual presentation so that you can improve it next time? Any thoughts on that, please?
Yes. I always say to people, do you ever uh, publish a piece of writing that you've never edited? My point of saying that is, if you want to get better and improve any issues that you might have when you're speaking, record yourself. Record yourself and watch it back. It's actually something that you could then reflect on, figure out what you did right, what you did wrong, and also the level of engagement that you might have is a clear indicator to how people are enjoying your session. So you'll see people react at certain times or not react at certain times. Use all of those lessons when you're watching it back to learn from, reflect from, and keep improving.
Fantastic. Well, Janet, it's been fantastic to see you. Thank you for making the time. Thanks to
Of course.
Buster for
For
keeping
not, for not,
calm.
yeah, he actually didn't
That's
bark. Yay.
that's great. So yeah, thank you. There's a lot of information in there, everybody, to take away. And Janet's been an absolute star in terms of sharing that with us in such a useful and entertaining way. Um, so thank you for the time you've given. Thank you to everybody on the webinar today. As I say, we're going to send you a cheat sheet in the next few days just to keep that going. And we'll also put this recording on the website. Our next webinar is taking place on Thursday, the 14th of January, where we'll be talking about taking back control. So that's all about the overwhelm that we hear. I've got back-to-back team meetings. I'm being pulled here, I'm being pulled there. I saw a lovely phrase the other day. It said, I've just realized that I'm not working at home, I'm living at work. And so that's what that webinar is all about. And so
That's good.
thank you to every single person that's been here. We hope you've got some nuggets to take away, and we wish you every success on your journey as an awesome virtual presenter. Thank you all. Enjoy the rest of your day. Goodbye.